Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
Families devastated, a community shaken. As memorials continue to grow, calls for action grow louder. After 11 people were killed, dozens more injured, when a suspected driver made their way into a crowd at the Lapu-Lapu Day Filipino Festival on Saturday in Vancouver. Many questions. How could this happen? Why did this happen? Could anything have prevented it? With each day, heartbreaking details emerge about the lives lost. We're also learning more about the suspect. I'm Melanie Ng, and in this episode of The Big Story, we speak with Sonia Aslam, journalist with 1130 News Radio and CityNews Vancouver, who has been covering this story very closely. Sonia, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
I want to begin on a personal note. You've been doing this for some time. You have been a journalist for some time. Though some of the images and details to this story are so alarming and emotional. And I know our listeners can't see you right now, but I see the emotion in your eyes now. Can you speak to what it's like to cover tragedy like this?
I mean, I can tell you that it absolutely never gets easier. My deepest apologies. I think the images we saw on Saturday were really hard. I'm not going to describe them because I don't think that's going to add anything to the story. I think it's unnecessary. But yeah, as somebody who's covered this so extensively, just locally in the last few days, but has covered crime so intensely for so many years, the images and the video and just the sheer heartbreak, as you mentioned, on people's faces, the sounds of the screaming and just the horror of what was happening was really hard to come to grips with. I mean, I think as a reporter, very often you are on the front lines of having to cover a major event. We are on the front lines of history more often than not. But very often when we cover these stories, not only are we doing our jobs and we're doing a public service by informing the public, we are also experiencing the same raw emotions that the people who we're speaking with are going through. And that can be really tough. It's part of the job and we accept it, but like I said, it just never gets easier.
I think, for anyone across Canada who's been following any of the headlines, just reading about it, seeing even just still images, I cannot imagine you, Sonia, your newsroom, who has seen and heard a lot. It is so troubling, and that's not to discount any of the other stories that you've covered in the past, but for some reason, this really has made many people speak out and stop and think. And I think in a climate that we're in right now that feels heavily politicized, we stop and we think about people, people first. There are so many angles to this story, and I don't want to treat it like a news story in that sense, but I want to talk about, let's begin the festival itself, Lapu-Lapu Day. It's a fairly new festival in the Vancouver area. And in my research, Lapu-Lapu, and myself, I am half Filipino, and this individual representing resistance against Spanish colonization, and that's sort of the history behind it. And when we see this festival for, I believe it was thousands gathering, but it's new because not everyone knew about it in the Vancouver area, but enough where it did draw some crowds. Was that on your radar at all as a journalist about this gathering? I know you get a lot that come into the newsroom, but did you know much about it?
No, like you said, it was fairly new. I think this was either the first or second year that this had taken place. And not to disregard it by any means. To your point, though, we get thousands of invites every single year. There's events every weekend in such a large area like the Lower Mainland, from the Vancouver area out to those who are familiar to the Fraser Valley, Abbotsford, Chilliwack. It is across the board. This, because it's so new, we didn't have any indication that something could happen. There should be extra security. There should be lots of eyes on this. It was just another normal day in the city where there's a family-friendly event happening, and it happens all the time. Except in this case, this ended up in tragedy.
We heard from the Vancouver Mayor, Ken Sim, Wednesday. Not the first time that they've spoken out, but today, saying there will be a comprehensive internal review. The quote that I got from that news conference that I know you were watching, Sonia, the mental health crisis is not just a health crisis. It has become a public safety crisis. This referring to the suspected driver, which we are learning was under the care of a mental health team at the time, but was on an extended leave under the Mental Health Act via Vancouver Coastal Health. Can you talk a little bit about those words from the Vancouver mayor and mental health and how it's being treated in the Vancouver area?
I think it's not being treated, and I think that's the problem. It is a crisis. It's been going on for years. This is not new. This is not a new problem, and that's really unfortunate because I think had resources been in place for some time, whether it's at a provincial level or even a citywide level, it's not to say that this could have been prevented. Nobody could have imagined or predicted what happened this weekend, but if you don't have resources in place and things like this happen, then there are so many questions. And the other issue, and I know the mayor had mentioned this, so did the interim police chief, is this is a large-scale incident. This is a mass casualty. We have almost a dozen people who've been killed, including a 5-year-old girl. But we've had a number of random attacks, random stabbings, people who have been killed during broad daylight in downtown Vancouver, and mental health has been a factor. It was a matter of time until things escalated to a point where there is a breaking point for the community, for politicians, for now victims' families saying, what are we doing? And what is in place to help those who need it? And I think that's where a lot of his anger came from. I know the premier echoed some of that anger of something needs to change. But I mean, unless anyone's actually going to commit to that change, these attacks will continue to happen.
I'm assuming with this change means funding. And that's where, there might be some butting heads. Is that the issue right now? Funding when it comes to beds available, when it comes to resources available? Where's the disconnect right now?
I think it's everywhere. Funding is, I think, the broad spectrum label for it because there's so much that's covered under that umbrella. So whether it's having beds, it's even just having access to services. For a lot of people, getting access to a therapist is very costly, and the majority of people can't afford it. Even if you have full benefits, they run out. They only cover so much, and then you're not better and you don't continue getting help and things can spiral. And then at that point, what happens? You end up at the ER and they're going to send you home. You're going to go to urgent care. They're also going to give you a list of people to talk to and send you home. So there's this vicious cycle around mental health where is funding the solution? Of course, money can help in a lot of situations, but there needs to be a broader commitment to making sure that there's oversight. So if you need help and you are in the system, somebody's following up. There's a team of experts. There is a team of doctors who are following your case. That is a huge undertaking, and I appreciate that. I really do. But it's what's necessary. We're at a point now where things are not getting better. Things are progressively getting worse when it comes to mental health. And unless somebody intervenes, again, with funding at a provincial level, at a city level, frankly, at a federal level to say we need to figure out this crisis. This is not a BC problem. This is not a Vancouver issue. This is a national thing. This is from coast to coast. I bet you every province can say, yeah, we need more funding for mental health. We need a commitment to help those who really need it. And it will help the community in general. And that was Mayor Ken Sim's issue is it is not just a public safety crisis. It is a health crisis. Those two things are very interlinked. And I think that's lost on a lot of people.
Yeah, indeed intertwined.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Nicole Byer, helping you make those rooms flyer. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild! Like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Ooh, fierce! This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
I want to bring it back to the story today. And again, this is now in the hands of police, an investigation when it comes to the suspect. And so we do not have all the details. And again, with each day, with each hour, more details are coming out. I do always, in stories like this, want to honor the victims and the families. Is there anything that you've learned about those lives lost that you can share with listeners today? You did mention a 5-year-old girl as one of the victims, and just hearing these details are so very heartbreaking. But is there anything that has especially touched you?
I think the 5-year-old girl is definitely one. I mean, that's the youngest victim. So the age ranges from 5 to 65. We have 8 women, that little girl, and 2 men who have been killed. I did follow up just very quickly with Vancouver Police to find out, was this a targeted incident? Because the number of women is so much higher than the number of male victims. At this point, they said, no, it doesn't look like that. The 5-year-old girl died alongside her parents. So it was a family who was killed. And there is a teenage boy in that family who is now an orphan. He has no one. And it's senseless. It's heartbreaking, but I think that's really tough. And the only other one that really jumps out to me is it was actually brought to my attention by a member of the Filipino community on Tuesday morning, and it was a 2-year-old child who's currently in BC Children's Hospital in not good condition. And that is one of our youngest victims, who remains in hospital as you and I speak. And we don't have the extent of injuries. This person, a family friend, sent me photos of this child in a hospital bed. I'm not going to detail what the situation was, but it was not good. And when you see images, again, like that, it just really gives you pause. And I think it adds way more impact to a story that I know has resonated with not just the Filipino community and those who have friends in that community and loved ones in that community, but just in general, it is really hard to process how this could have happened. How you went from like a sunny, beautiful Saturday evening in the city of Vancouver, enjoying a fun family festival, to an outcome where a lot of people lost their lives.
We are, I should note, when we are recording this, it is the evening Wednesday, because I am only saying that because of the numbers of those lives lost we are citing now. This is as of the very latest information we have now. When this episode goes to air, when you are listening to it, those numbers sadly may rise, and we may be learning more. Let's go back to the investigation. I know you've been covering it, Sonia. You've been, covering what police have been saying. Is there anything known? You said doesn't seem at this point to be a targeted attack. When you named off the genders, this immediately, for me, triggered the Yonge Street van attack in Toronto, and the suspect in that case with stories of incel, and it goes on and on about that, the person charged, and it's. If it seems there is no indication in that sense, have police provided any information about where they are leading when it comes to how this may have happened?
No, the only thing that's come up quite a bit is just the mental health aspect, which makes you question sort of what the mindset was of a person who could potentially do this. The reason, you're right, when you hear 8 women are killed out of 11, my mind automatically went to, was this targeted? Was this something that was planned out? And again, the VPD have told me, no, that wasn't the case that they know of right now. It's very often in any kind of criminal investigation, again, having covered it so extensively, I know people want a motive. I know people want answers. I know they want closure. I know there's a lot of anger, and I get it. But motive is not usually and not always the first thing that pops out. I know it's easy to look at it from afar and say, oh, I know what happened. It's XYZ. It doesn't work that way. And this is such a delicate investigation because this person is currently in custody and there's a trial that could be forthcoming. So it's also dangerous, can be dangerous to sort of start speculating on why this happened and maybe this didn't happen and all those extra factors because, again, innocent till proven guilty. And then we do have a mental health factor that is really underlying throughout this entire thing.
Sonia, can you speak to the future of big events and festivals and what's going to be happening moving forward when it comes to security? Because if I'm living in the city of Vancouver, and again, this is not just a Vancouver issue, because we've seen situations, sadly, like this happen in other cities across Canada. Again, I give the van attack on Yonge Street in Toronto as an example, because when that happened, police reevaluated festivals and started putting up various barriers, ensured more security is put into place. Have there been major conversations around that for you where you live?
So those conversations are happening right now. We've heard from both Vancouver's mayor and the interim police chief. And I'm saying interim for those who aren't aware. The current chief of Vancouver Police has left. And so there's a changing of the brass sort of at the top. There is now a comprehensive internal review, is what we're being told, to look at a number of things. That's going to be permitting, whether or not all these sites and all these events have that. Security at sites. It's going to be planning and emergency response. Should anything like this ever happen again, and we all hope it doesn't to any scale, how do you handle that? There is no way of always predicting these things, and we've been pressing police for answers on that, and they've been very clear that with this event specifically, there was no information, zero intel that they had that there were any kind of threats, that there was something that could happen. They've also been very clear that the city remains safe, which is what we expect them to say, quite frankly, and that you can continue going to events, you can continue being out in public at family-friendly sort of things that are like this festival. But I understand the concern, but we don't even have answers yet in terms of what changes now. How do you have another event? I should mention that this tragedy happened on Saturday evening. Within a few hours later, we had the Vancouver Sun Run very early on Sunday morning. And there was a lot of concern from just people on social media, people calling our newsroom. Is the event going ahead? Is this a thing? We're all going to gather in a really open space downtown. And you're worried, you're scared, you're concerned. I get it. And the event went off without a hitch. There were no issues. Police were there. First responders are always on site for big events like that. But this really does make you question the next time we have an event, what kind of response does it prompt? And there are issues with that as well, because that's a lot of money. That's a lot of funding that goes into having a full-scale police response. And the thing is you can't do that. I don't think also, as we've heard from the VPD, they're saying, look, we're not going to have a police officer at every single corner anytime there's an event. With 3,000 events in the city, it's just not feasible. And I get it. But I know people are scared, and I hope that we're able to, get to a point where you feel comfortable again. Vancouver is hosting the FIFA World Cup. We have games coming up next year. Taylor Swift was just here in December. If the Canucks make the playoffs again, which I hope they do, there's wide-scale events for, NHL games, as you know. But you can't live in fear is the messaging that we've been getting from both the police and the mayor.
For many community members, it's not living in fear, it's living in unity. We've seen some beautiful the beautiful memorials that have been growing and the stories that have been shared in the community, not just the Filipino community, but everyone coming out and supporting one another. And, that message and that love extends from coast to coast to coast to Canadians, really sending all of their love to you there in Vancouver. Can you speak to that aspect of humanity and how people are really supporting one another right now?
That's been the silver lining to all of this. You're right. We've had a number of community events and vigils and just people gathering at a local park or gathering near the site. People who are complete strangers, who weren't at the event, who didn't know anyone who was there, who didn't know any of the victims or had zero connection to them, were arriving in droves. Dropping off flowers, dropping off teddy bears, lighting a candle. I mean, Prime Minister Mark Carney was there. The Premier was there as well. There have been large gatherings just to be at the site and just to be in the comfort of other people. I think that's how any community, small or big, gets through these things, is you find peace in the love and frankly in the arms of other people. Whether or not you know them, that's besides the point. We've all felt what you and I are talking about right now. You feel the emotion, you feel the weight and the heaviness and just the difficulty of getting past an event that is so, so horrifying. But you do find the comfort in other people. And we've seen it. Strangers who are hugging and holding each other and sitting side by side of different backgrounds, different faiths, just connected by, unfortunately, a really horrifying tragedy.
I think that is the perfect place to end this, Sonia, is connection. And sadly, under those circumstances, but at the end of the day, it is us being there for one another in so many ways, especially in this day. Sonia Aslam, appreciate you taking the time with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that was The Big Story. You can send us feedback on this episode or any other episode. You can email us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. You can find us on the Seeker app or, of course, on all your favorite podcast players. Be sure to rate, review, follow, and share. I'm Melanie Ng. Appreciate you listening.